Welcome to the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast, dialoguing disability and discussing difference, inclusion, and all abilities in today's world. Now here are your hosts, Matthew Shapiro and Bob Nolly.
And throw the door open. Here they come right now. Welcome to episode 17 of the Sixth Wheels Consulting Disability Podcast. This is Bob Nolly. How are you? Here comes fall. That's good stuff. And here is my good buddy and your host, Matthew Shapiro. Matthew, how are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you, sir?
Okay. I'm way past good.
Good.
How has your week been?
Busy. What did I do?
Yeah, you notice I tee you up every week for that. I know you've been busier than all get out.
Yeah.
It's like the secret password.
Yeah, no, I keynoted at an event earlier in the week in where was I? I was in Roanoke, Virginia. I was the keynote speaker for an assistive technology conference at the Hotel Roanoke, which was a very nice opportunity. Made some great connections there, and I'm trying to expand on some new work opportunities, which, trying to line up some meetings and different things like that. And then finally, after that trip, I'm now done with traveling for a little while. So I'm now able to get caught up on things that I haven't been able to catch up on. As all of our listeners know, I've been traveling like a crazy person here over the last month and a half or so. And so now that's finally slowing down, and I'm excited to actually be home for a while.
That's one thing, being the professional podcasters that we are.
Yes.
Of course. We want to make this timeless and evergreen so people never really know what time it is. But, I don't care. What the heck? So if there's something timely we want to talk about, we will talk about it. Like I could talk to you about, what's going on in sports right now, or how well the Redskins are doing.
Yes.
And, and they are doing well, surprisingly so. But there's a seasonality to all this. So as we get deep into the fourth quarter and the holiday season, do you still stay just as busy?
So usually, around the holidays, I start taking some time off, because usually, when you start getting into holiday season, that's when a lot of conferences are kind of slowing down. End of year stuff for a lot of businesses is slowing down. So they really don't, try to, it's their fourth quarter, so to speak, as you said. And so a lot of times they're not necessarily trying to do new projects this late in the quarter, because they're trying to slow some things down. But, every now and again, I'll have some things pop up every so often, but usually around the holiday season, you start to slow down a little bit for the rest of the year. And that's why I'm always busy hunting for more opportunities and trying to find more projects. So that's the fun and exciting part of it all, but also the stressful and scary part of it too.
So, and so imagine you have been very busy, and everybody deserves to draw a breath here during the holidays, however you celebrate them in the fourth quarter. So I kind of cut you off just a little bit on our last episode, but I did want to kind of tease the event that had happened that you had told us about, that you had a real great back-to-school event happen. You returned to your high school and address those folks there. Do you want to tell us more fully about that?
Yeah, it was a really cool week a couple of weeks ago that I got to experience. It really was for me. I kind of called it my back to school week in general. So probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, I was able to, on the Monday, I was able to do a keynote speech at my college alma mater, Virginia Commonwealth University. And then on that Wednesday, I was able to go back to my high school, J.R. Tucker High School in Henrico County here in Virginia, and do their senior convocation for the class of 2019. So it was a really cool week for me to be able to go back to both environments and talk about my experiences in both of those places. It freaked me out because I was speaking to the class of 2019 and I was the class of 2009. So my 10-year reunion is coming up right around the corner for my high school. But it was a cool opportunity to be able to give back and share my experiences now that I've been an adult for a handful of years and been out of the school environment for a number of years, because they always tell you that time sort of flies, and you'll gain different perspectives as when you're an adult. And I can't agree with that statement more. It's so funny that we want to argue with adults all the time, and we always want to say, oh, what do adults know? But when you get to be my age at 27, and no, that doesn't make me old. That just makes me. I still consider myself to be a big kid at heart. So it was cool to be able to share my 10-year look back with my high school in the class of 2019, and then also to be able to go back to my college and talk about my experiences at VCU. So. That's
really great. That whole concept. Just hear you say you remain a kid at heart. If that's serving you that well at 27, it's going to serve you that well at 47 and 67. So
sure.
Hats off to you. So when I thought about you going back to do these speeches or doing your lobbying work or any other work when you hit the road and all the travel you have to do, I had this thought to myself, and I'm in total transparency in here. I bet he goes out of his way to make sure he looks razor sharp when he goes out.
That is not a false statement, sir.
That would make it true. That would make it true. That
would make it true. The double negative would make it very true. I take a lot of pride in having a good appearance pretty much anytime I go out in public, because I often argue that people make a lot of first impressions just solely based off what they see people wearing. So, obviously when I'm doing my lobbying work or I'm doing, something like a keynote speech, I try to dress pretty well, like a button down and some nice shoes and some nice pants and some nicely steamed pants, so to speak.
Yeah, with a razor sharp crease.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. But it's really funny that you mentioned that. One of the things that we do to find a lot of really cool content for our podcast is we do a lot of article searches, and so your segue is perfect because we both found 2 articles recently about dress for people with disabilities and how a lot of designers nowadays are actually making clothing that is more accessible to people with disabilities. Because, and I can argue this point. It's really hard for me to wear a suit in a seated position. I don't like button my coat. Like, how most men, when they stand up, they're supposed to button their coats and make the suit look more full. In that way, well, I can't do that, right? Because I never stand up from my seated position. So we came across these 2 articles that are designers who are specifically making a lot of really fashionable and sweet-looking clothing for people with disabilities and different disabilities that they may have to live with. And so
I found this article in the New York Post, that great tome of journalism, the New York Post.
Now.
About a lady named Izzy Cammalleri. And she is a longtime presence in the fashion industry. And she's designed for some very familiar names. Let's drop one, David Bowie.
Ooh.
Let's drop another one, Angelina Jolie.
Ooh.
But she said that about 7 or 8 years ago, she met a client who changed everything for her. She met Carolyn Pioro. Now, Carolyn Pioro, we could sit here all night and I would say, guess what her vocation was? And you guys wouldn't get it. She was a formal circus aerialist. Now, I don't know if that just meant she's a trapeze artist or what, but a circus aerialist. And her career ended very suddenly when she broke her back. It left her paralyzed from the neck down, and she was in her 20s, and now she was relying on a wheelchair to get around. And she wanted Izzy Cammalleri to make her an eye-catching wool coat. And the thing that got Izzy hooked was, and this is a quote, fashion was still really important to her. Izzy's a 53-year-old based in Canada. And days after Cammalleri put the finishing touches on the gray Alexander McQueen-inspired creation, she received the best compliment ever, she said. Carolyn said people kept stopping me to tell me how awesome her coat was. And she really got from her tone that she had given that person a lot more than just a really nice winter coat. It included a new sense of self, a new sense of style, and a booster in her dignity. Wow, that's just powerful. So she knew what she wanted to do next. She created fashionable clothing for women with physical disabilities. And she she said, I love the way she said, it's like somebody put a real big firecracker under my butt.
Yeah.
Ouch. And so she launched a new collection, the Izzy collection, which was a line of chic basics for women in wheelchairs.
And I think, first of all, I appreciate you reading that, but I also think like there are a lot of challenges in dressing nicely for people who use wheelchairs, right? Because you want to wear a nice suit and you want to look good, but the chair and the disability can sometimes provide challenges to wearing the kind of clothes that you want to wear. Like I said, I know for me, when I wear jackets, it's very hard and very confining because of the way I sit in my chair. And so to have, because the way it's worked for me in the past is I've often had to get suits that were too big for me. So it makes my shoulders look really big. And it's not like I can get a fully tailored, James Bond-esque suit as much as I would like to do that, because I'd look pretty sweet if I do say so myself. But, I think everyone has the right and the desire to want to look good, right? Because there's that kind of phrase of look good, feel good, and play good. So
yeah, you have the right to the dignity that comes with that.
Sure. And so I'm excited to see that more and more fashion designers are taking that seriously and making clothing that works for people who are amputees, works for people who are wheelchair users. I've seen a line recently. Tommy Hilfiger, I think within the last 2 or 3 years, has come out with a line of clothing for children with disabilities, and it's easy access points. There's not very many zippers. A lot of it is Velcro oriented, which is awesome because it's easy access points for family members and for the people with disability. And the other thing too is I think all of this clothing looks good, right? We can there's often an argument within disability of you can have 2 of 3 things, but you can't have all 3. It can either be cheap, it can look good, or it can feel good, right? And so what has been the challenge is trying to figure out a way to kind of get affordable clothing that looks good, that also feels good. And I think these designers are taking those thoughts into consideration so that, that people with disabilities can wear good clothing, can feel good, and just feel like any other citizen kind of thing.
That's really important. And I think as we talk about this, I bet you a lot of our listeners are, as they hear this, can, for one item, empathize with us 100%, because I know people even that are outside of the disability community who have a tough time finding clothes that fit. And I don't mean it has to have the perfect fit that, where, your vanity is just overwhelming your sense of, your common sense. But
Sure.
It's hard when you find something you wear. It's like your favorite pair of pants, your favorite jeans, your favorite shirt, your favorite suit, all of those things, and that just gets incrementally more difficult in the disability community. I think.
Yeah, no, I that makes a whole lot of sense, and I'll tell our listeners, there's one thing that I struggle with in terms of clothing, and this is kind of funny, but it's also a huge challenge. I can never keep my pants up. In the back, I should say. Maybe I should clarify that with keep my pants up in the back. And so I always have to be very cognizant to either make sure my pants are up as best as they can be, or that I'm covering everything so that maybe someone on stage or somebody else doesn't get a surprise that they maybe don't necessarily want or need. And so pants for me is a huge struggle as well, because I scoot back in my chair all the time, and when I go to scoot back in my wheelchair, the friction helps to pull my pants down a little bit. And so, I am excited to see that these designers are, and maybe they haven't thought about that issue in particular, but they're at least thinking about how can we make clothing that is workable for people of all body sizes, shapes, and who live in all positions, right? Because I spend 95% of my day in a seated position. And so I need my clothes to be able to move with me, work with me in those environments.
Yeah, that's really something. You talk about all the sense of dignity that comes with being dressed in a razor sharp way, and that we all deserve that. But if you're leaving surprise, it's because your pants don't come up well enough in the back. That just liquidates that right away, and that's so unfortunate.
Sure.
Yeah. So, all right, you find something else from another lady that has been similarly moved that Izzy was, Stephanie Thomas?
Yeah. So there was another article we found. That there's another designer who is working on developing, in addition, working on developing, again, fashionable clothes that can work for people with disabilities. I don't know if there was anything from that article that you noticed that sort of stood out to you. I immediately, when I saw this article, I went and followed her on Instagram. That's one of her big marketing pushes. And, it's interesting that it's basically a Q&A between this other young lady's, the stylist's name is Stephanie Thomas, and she does a Q&A with the Vox website about, fashion.
Yeah, what she did was she started very simply. It's very rational. And she said when she meets someone who tells her they didn't realize, people with disabilities had different clothing needs, yikes, she asked them a simple question. She asked them, what do you do when you stand up? And that's pretty easy, because she says, you adjust your clothing somehow. You pull your pants up, you make sure your shirt tail's tucked in. If you're a lady, you adjust your skirt, you smooth your skirt. Clothing is designed for standing, so adjustments need to be made for people that can't stand or stand much at all.
Sure.
And that really led her to where she moved. The writer characterizes her as being pretty stubborn quality, but now she's using that to drive her advocacy for not only herself but others as well. She is consulted and booked through a website, Curatable. That's the number. I'm going to say that again.
The numeral.
Through a website called Curatable. The number 8 is in the middle. CUR8ABLE. And maybe you can put that in the show notes. Thomas has developed a case-by-case client list that includes everyday shoppers. Yeah, there's celebrities there as well. There are even some big brands there that have come to her as well. But everyday people come to her looking for help. She said fashion has always been a form of expression for her. But when she got to college, when she wanted to participate in the Miss America pageant, she was living in Kentucky, and in Kentucky, this is not a stereotype. They take the pageant business really seriously. And so the coach asked her, why do you never button that sleeve? And she said when she noticed she never did that, it was because she didn't have a right thumb. And her husband was a wheelchair user. So she said, have you ever thought about clothing for people with disabilities? And that was the trigger. It wasn't a big thing for her, for many years later. But that's how it started. That was the light bulb moment for her.
And that's really cool. And I think that brings me to think about a different point of, in addition to clothing, this is what excites me about both of these designers, right? And the other designers that do similar type of work, is that they are like our overall whole topic of this entire podcast is we're bringing more people to our world of disability, and they are helping us to be a more inclusive world by creating clothing that works for everyone. And I'm on Stephanie's website right now, actually, and some of this stuff looks really good. Like, I would definitely rock some of this clothing, and it's exciting and makes me feel good that there are other people out there trying to do things to help us look good. Because I think ultimately, too, the other piece to it is if you set up it's a self-esteem thing, right? You wear good clothes, you feel good, you do better in life. And so now that we have resources available to us to help us just snazzier, it's a pretty cool win-win and outcome for everybody.
Yeah, one thing she said as well, which I'm not going to hijack the show here, but it's something that over on Labrador Leadership. Thanks for you guys that come to listen there as well. It's something we talk about a lot, and that's the passion and where you get your knowledge from. Lots of people today, because we have Google. We feel like we know more than we do. And I won't go down that road, but we have this feeling that we know more than we really do. But when she got a hold of this idea, and she characterized that period of time as being pre-Google, which kind of tickled me, she just dove into it. This is the passion key. She dove into it. She started reading. That meant actually reading the hard copy, boxes and boxes of research, medical journals, psych journals, sociology journals. When I say journal, that's everything. A magazine. All these journals are like, academic research and critically thought, peer-reviewed articles. And the need about clothing for people with disabilities started with thinking about veterans and how people with disabilities are viewed in public space. That started to be a driver for her as well.
Sure.
And then she went to shoes first. That was kind of interesting.
Particularly ladies do love a good pair of shoes. I know that much.
That's right. That's right. So, it's so interesting to hear that, your passion can intersect with the disability community and just provide value, inspiration, and perhaps even a shot of dignity that you would have never thought of before.
Sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to episode 17 of the Six Wheels Consulting Podcast. This is Bob Nolly with my good friend and host, Matthew Shapiro. Until next time, think inclusion, keep rolling forward.